Welcome to the Thyroid Fixer podcast, where I'm all about helping you lose that stubborn weight that won't come off no matter what you do. Get off your couch at 2 p.m. and get through your day with energy and stop counting the hairs that come out of your head. I'm your host, Dr. Amy, and I'm here to help you get optimized with your thyroid and your hormones. It's all part of living our mantra: better thyroid, better hormones equals a better life. So let's get you back to being the badass human that you're meant to be. Let's approach it from a thyroid and hormone optimization standpoint. Between myself and my guests, you will be loaded down with information to take control of your health and get back to being you. So let's get started. I know that fat loss as we age really kind of becomes a hurdle, and we can overcome that hurdle, I promise you. So I am joining forces again with my dear friend and fat loss expert, Natalie Jill, to bring you another free masterclass on lasting fat loss in midlife and beyond. So we are going to teach you just 3 simple foundational strategies for fat loss in midlife, because it gets tougher as you crest the big 4-0. What you used to do in your 20s and 30s no longer works in your 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond. So we need to change that up. Simple nutrition and workout hacks, how to up your fat loss game. Even if you're experiencing injury or pain, you can't work out. We get it. She's been there. I've been there. So I'm going to invite you for a live virtual workshop on Wednesday, June 26th, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. We'll put the link in the show notes. I would love to see you there. Just join us live and get these tips so that you can start moving forward in your fat loss journey. I understand how hard it is, and I want to help you. We want to help you. So we'll see you on Wednesday. Did you ever come home from a really long day, your energy's drained, and you just want to sit down and watch Netflix and eat a good dinner, but you got to still squeeze in your workout? So how about if you actually got home at 7 and your workout was done by 7:05? Does that blow your mind? You're already done. You're unwinding. That's the reality with Carol Bike. In just 5 minutes, you experience a workout that is scientifically proven to be as effective as a 45-minute run. Carol isn't just a time saver. It's your literal shortcut to health, happiness, better muscles, lower body fat, leaving you more time for what actually matters in life, like watching Netflix and eating a great dinner. So if you want to check out Carol Bike, they give you a warranty, a trial period that is unmatched. You'll even come get it if you don't like it. 30 days. I mean, who can even beat that? So check it out. Go to carolbike.com, carolbike.com. You're going to use the code Dr. Amy if you grab one of these bad boys, which I highly recommend doing. You're going to use the code Dr. Amy. That is going to save you $100 off. And again, there's no risk. There's no risk. Try it for 30 days. If you don't like it, they will come pick it up. But I guarantee you the time-saving aspect, the muscle building aspect, the fat burning aspect, you're just going to love it. Are you trying to lose weight? I mean, most of us are, but when you cut calories or you use those new Beverly Hills soccer mom drug of choice for weight loss injectables, you're not going to get in enough protein. And that's the problem. That's where you start losing muscle and fat at the same time. You don't want to lose your sexy lean muscle. So Keon Aminos helps prevent muscle loss. Keon Aminos can help you feel full when you're cutting calories, which that's a bonus. And it's going to help you build that lean muscle for a faster metabolism, a lean, toned, sexy body. So add in Keon Aminos. I do it every single day. I drink them during my workout, and then I'll also drink them throughout the day because that's supporting my muscles, keeping my muscles as I'm just sitting at my desk working. Add in Keon Aminos, try them out. I love the berry, I love the mango, but you're going to love all the flavors. Toss it in your water, shake it up, drink it throughout the day. And then, like I said, definitely during a workout. So you are going to use my link to save 20% off. So that's a no-brainer for you to try these out. You're going to go to Keon.com. That's GETKION.com/thyroid. And that is going to give you 20% off your first order. Let me know what you think. I know I say this about every podcast, but this is one that you need to listen to. My guest today, I have wanted her on ever since we first met, really. And she changed my mind about progesterone and how we dose it. And she continues to really be a thought leader in this space of bioidentical hormone replacement. She's a compounding pharmacist, highly accomplished, decades of experience using bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, but really has become a world-renowned expert in the area of progesterone specifically. I mean, she's brilliant in all bioidentical hormones, but with progesterone, she has shifted how, like I said, I treat Dr. Lindsay Berkson, Dr. David Brownstein. She has changed our minds and has allowed us to look at you, the patient, in a totally different light in terms of what you need and how much hormone you need to achieve a better quality of life. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're not leaving guys out here in this discussion of progesterone. You need to listen to this episode. So stay tuned, keep pressing play, don't stop it, and listen to Carol Petersen talk all about the benefits of progesterone and how to properly use it. I have been wanting to have my guest on for quite some time, ever since we met, actually. So Carol and I met when we joined forces on a mutual patient. And what was interesting about this patient, she had a couple lab tests in a row, back to back, with incredibly high estrogen levels, total estrogen and estradiol. And she was working with Carol as a compounding pharmacist. And Carol came in and was like, we need to really increase your progesterone to balance this out. And I met with Carol and she's telling me, we need to go maybe 600, maybe 800 mgs of progesterone. And my jaw's on the floor. I'm like, wait, what? How? No, that's what they use for fertility treatments. How are we going to go that high, Carol? I don't know about this. And I have to tell you, this woman has changed my entire perspective on progesterone. So she kind of catapulted me to open up my mind, because that level of progesterone did help this patient tremendously with her anxiety and her sleep and lowering her estrogen. She has changed the minds of thought leaders in this space, like my two favorite people in the world, Dr. Lindsay Berkson and Dr. David Brownstein. I mean, all y'all have heard me talk about them and interview them on this show. And they're literally my favorite people to interview because they are just loaded in their brain with information. Well, same thing with Carol. So you are going to be in for a treat today. This is, as I said in the intro, an episode that every single person needs to listen to, whether you're male or female or 18 years old or 75 years old. You need to listen to this episode. So Carol, welcome. I love you for coming on. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Amy. It's my pleasure to be here.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited. So we're diving mainly into progesterone. I mean, you're brilliant in all things bioidentical hormones, but I really wanted to focus on progesterone since that's really what you have changed the minds of many of us on in terms of dosing and everything. But let's just start with, for anyone that's maybe just tuning in and hasn't heard me talk ad nauseum about the benefits, can you talk about what are the benefits of progesterone? Well, what is progesterone? I know it's a hormone, but you can go deeper. And then what are all the benefits of progesterone?
Oh, well, the list is endless. And I'm learning something new almost every month or so about progesterone. And that's probably one of the problems, because we're taught primarily that progesterone is the hormone that goes up during the luteal phase. That is, at ovulation, you will have a substantial rise in progesterone, and eventually it drops and you'll start bleeding. And because of this menstrual chart, which shows progesterone being very low in the first part of the cycle, everybody focuses in on the luteal phase. However, it's a big mistake. That menstrual chart should have bullet holes in it or something, because the progesterone on there is expressed in nanograms per mil when you do a test. Mm-hmm. And the estradiol is picograms, 1,000 times lower. So if in your mind you can picture this graph, that line for progesterone needs to be astronomically off the page if it were in the same unit as the estrogen. And I think hence people underestimate how important progesterone is relative to estrogen. It needs to be there and needs to be a lot. It's the most predominant sex hormone that women make. First is progesterone, then it's testosterone, then it's estradiol. Yet our culture has focused everything on estrogen, estrogen, estrogen. Finally, 1922, we have a article published by Jerry Lynn Pryor, who's a hero of mine. She's a menstrual cycle researcher in British Columbia, that progesterone is effective for vasomotor symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
So what is happening as women start to drift into the perimenopause years? Vasomotor symptoms and sleep problems are some of the primary things that come up. Yet this is being ignored entirely. But what is becoming in shorter and shorter supply is the progesterone, because it's been documented that young women, 20, 30 years old, have missed ovulation. So they're missing that whole big surge that they would normally have.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that happens during perimenopause is estrogen levels are the highest in the whole lifespan of a woman during perimenopause. So we have this extreme difference happening. The estrogen is getting higher, the progesterone is getting depleted from lacked ovulations. But even more importantly, I think, is because progesterone is one metabolic step away from cortisol, any time that we're under stress, progesterone to the rescue, from the adrenal glands in the first part of the cycle, from the ovaries in the second part of the cycle. But consider the amount of stress that we're under today. It's not your mother's menopause anymore, or your grandmother's. Our families weren't exposed to the toxins, to the stressful news, to chemicals and poor food quality.
Mm-hmm.
The things that we're faced with are enormous now. So we need every bit of progesterone we can get. So when I started my career, I started working for Women's International Pharmacy, and we were specializing in the treatment of severe PMS. And the guidance for this came from Dr. Katarina Dalton. Her
Mm-hmm.
work is from the 1950s. So we're talking about 70 years or so. And so what we found was that we could do oral progesterone in oil, compounded. And that was the whole point of the pharmacy, because Dr. Dalton used suppositories, vaginal suppositories, after trying injectables, which are very painful, but certainly you get the full amount of progesterone.
Mm-hmm.
The suppository dosing was like 400 to 600 milligrams.
I was just going to say that. I was going to ask you, because I knew she used really high doses back then.
Right. So she, and that you might have to do that 2-3 times a day, easily.
So 400 a couple times a day. So some women were getting literally 1,200.
Yeah. So I
Okay.
can't speak for Dr. Dalton's time, but I can speak for Women's International time. And at the time, the highest dose I saw in a woman would be like 2,500 milligrams. So it wasn't all oral capsules. The doctors that were working with PMS would be using the capsules. We'd have rectal solutions, vaginal suppositories, lozenges, creams, gels, anything to help this woman get to enough progesterone. So we also learned from that experience was that these doses of progesterone were effective for the most part. There are exceptions, but it was effective.
Mm-hmm.
And if women were still bothered with PMS symptoms, I'd say take more.
Okay.
Take more. And their doctors even provided them with emergency doses, like maybe a troche to suck on for an emergency. And that was good because it would give you a very high peak level very quickly if you did it sublingually. So we would call that when it seemed not to be quite enough. We would call that, that your protocol's not quite enough. It's emergency. You need to use more. Now we worked with women. Some of these women were in such severe pain and full of symptoms. We had people threatening suicide when they called, and they were couldn't get out of bed with massive migraines and everything in between, really huge anxiety and heart palpitations and running to the hospital only to be told your heart is fine, go home, with no solutions. And we just knew all you had to do was take more progesterone.
Okay.
So I was quite used to all these lovely doses of progesterone and how well it would work. So then along comes Dr. John Lee on the scene. Okay, he wrote a great book, The Multiple Roles of Progesterone, a remarkable hormone, he called it. And it is a remarkable hormone, but I think he only touched the surface.
Okay.
But he did us a big disservice too. And this disservice was that you only made about 20 milligrams of progesterone per day. That's all you need.
So what year was this? So Dalton comes in the 50s using high doses and even emergency doses. When did this author release that book?
Oh, so that was probably late 80s, early 90s.
Okay. So that's really where, when we started seeing women getting their hormones stripped away anyways from the Women's Health Initiative.
Yeah. Making this even worse.
Yeah.
And so I did a deep dive into this once. I said, where did he get this information, 20 milligrams per day? And I got no joy in it. I couldn't find anything PubMed or some of the scientific literature, could not find this. And so Dr. Ray Peat, if you know his name, he was the one who inspired John Lee to use progesterone for women with osteoporosis, or to protect from osteoporosis. So Ray Peat has quite the following now, and he's got a remarkable brain. He had a remarkable newsletter. So I emailed him and I go, where did this 20 milligrams come from? He goes, I don't know. Dr. Lee was in the habit of making things up.
Oh my God, what? Oh, okay. Okay, to the detriment of women everywhere, we're going to write a book with false stuff in it. That's good.
Yes, a lot of the stuff was true about what progesterone does. However, he sends me back a reference and it said, it was something like 100 milligrams per day was measured in the venous return from the ovaries. And in Dr. Katerina Dalton's book, she has an interesting thing, kind of blew my mind because I hadn't read it earlier. But she measured the progesterone levels in the peritoneal fluid. So she actually punctured some bellies and got some fluid. And the level in the peritoneal fluid was 100 times the serum level of progesterone. So hello, what does that mean? Okay, so now we know much more now, like progesterone is made by the adrenal glands. It is made by the ovaries. It's made by all your nerve cells. So every little Schwann cell on your nervous system tissue makes its own progesterone. It makes its own pregnenolone, uses it right there. That shows up on nothing, no tests that we have available.
So that won't get picked up in any testing. The progesterone that's made in the nerve cells won't get picked up.
None. Yet I will say exogenously, if you use progesterone and you have nerve pain, tingling, or no sensation, you can put progesterone right on the tissue, sucks it up, and you can see remarkable changes in an hour maybe. So it's lovely that our body will take this exogenous progesterone and use it. Then our brain, which is full of cholesterol, it has its own independent hormone manufacture system there, makes a ton of progesterone right there, uses it right there. Again, we don't measure that. I've gotten in the habit of looking up things like its relationship to hormones. Just every every weird thing. And so I started seeing that we were talking about mast cell activation syndrome all
Yeah.
over the place.
Yeah, that seems to be a hot topic. Yep.
Yeah. Well, how does that occur? In each mast cell, you have, again, a whole hormone factory. And when estrogen is dominant with not enough progesterone in that little factory, histamine gets dumped. If progesterone is adequate, then it never gets dumped in the first place. So progesterone is a very potent antihistamine. And so you can have stuff disappear like, oh, stomach pain.
Oh my gosh. Okay. This seems like a miracle hormone because we know, like you mentioned, bone remodeling. Obviously, I mean, we didn't even get into all of the symptoms of perimenopause and menopause, which are helped by progesterone, like the hot flashes and the vaginal dryness. I mean, we all think estrogen when we think hot flashes and vaginal atrophy, but progesterone comes in as well. Sleep, mood, brain function. We're going to talk about its effect on the thyroid, but with everything that you're saying, it seems to be almost too good to be true, like a miracle hormone. And essentially it is.
Yes.
In your opinion? Would you call it a miracle hormone?
It truly is. And all these hormones come from cholesterol. They're the sex hormones, the adrenal hormones, vitamin D, bile. There's so many that are from this main molecule.
Mhm.
I begin to think it's like cholesterol's like maybe the God molecule or something. It's so needed and so pervasive. Of all these hormones that come from cholesterol, I think progesterone's activity is the most diverse. So then we come across a situation that happens when you use those small doses of progesterone, that 20 milligram, 30 milligram, and a lot of the over-the-counter progesterone products have a dose in that range. But a Whole Foods or whatever, you're going to get a very low dose progesterone. And John Lee, of course, would say this is perfect. That's all you need.
Mm-hmm. Now,
So
isn't that partially though, Carol, isn't that because there's a governing body, the FDA, DEA, whoever, that's saying, well, if this is over the counter, you can't put more than, I think the cutoff is 50 milligrams per dose. I mean, obviously you can use more of that cream, that oil, the serum, but don't we have like a cap on over the counter supplementation for progesterone?
used to be in that area, I think, like 0.2%, but there are companies that are using quite a lot more.
Okay.
And that has shifted legally. So you can find 100 milligram per dose, 200 milligram per dose. And thank God for it, because it's a whole new opportunity for women to help themselves or work with a practitioner who has some background in this to help themselves when their conventionally trained doctors don't have a clue what's going on.
Yeah.
So thank goodness for that. One company's been developed with higher doses of progesterone because the owner had catamenial epilepsy. So this is when you have seizures in the luteal phase. So hello, progesterone's involved. And there's lots in the literature about using progesterone to treat it, and you can. High doses of progesterone will stop these seizures. And it's probably good for other types of seizures too, but that's less clear in the literature.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, as I said, the nerve cells need this, the brain needs this. So progesterone has quite a bit of application. Sleep is quite remarkable. You can really improve sleep right away. I've had clients and people I've met and given them some progesterone, and they haven't slept for years. I'm sure you see these women in your practice, and men too. I'm getting men on progesterone, and this is another frustration. That same thing. We have massive amounts of progesterone in men, but it is secondary to testosterone. So for men, it's testosterone, progesterone, estrogen.
Mm-hmm.
They're not getting enough progesterone, and it's said to be able to relieve BPH, benign prostate
Yeah.
hypertrophy, Well, guess what? Estrogen is probably involved there as imbalance, but we've created a synthetic drug, finasteride, and we give it to men to treat that. So if you want to go to Google it, look at the structure of finasteride and look at the structure for progesterone, you go, hello, why aren't we using progesterone? And that's my question. We should be using it big time. And so the drugs, finasteride's also been pushed for male pattern baldness, losing hair.
And in women, finasteride and dutasteride being used for hair loss, which it does work. I mean, when you have a woman freaking out over losing her hair, yes, it works. But are you saying maybe instead we should just increase that progesterone and stop the hair?
Exactly.
Okay.
There was a supplement company once put together a serum for your hair, and it contained progesterone and sapometa. And I think it fell by the wayside. They didn't get much takers, but the idea I thought was pretty sound. So finasteride has a huge number of side effects, including loss of sexual function, depression, spent a lot of suicide from this particular drug. So why are we turning to this and say we think it's fine? But you mentioned progesterone in men, and everybody's horrified. Oh, we don't give men progesterone. No, you don't, because you're totally ignorant about what progesterone does. So, excellent for sleep in men. Dr. Michael Platt wrote about using progesterone in men who are overweight for obesity. So what he does, and this would apply to women too, he recommends you use progesterone at a mealtime, because progesterone does moderate insulin and glucose swings. So by having it right there when you're having your meal, you're lessening the swings of those two major hormones, which we do have to pay attention to, and people can lose weight by simply timing their progesterone at that time.
Now, I was going to ask you about the weight connection, and we're going to go down the rabbit hole of the thyroid connection as well. But if we're using progesterone, because I know this is going to be a question I'm going to get, so I'll just ask it now. If we're using progesterone at dinner, you know, you have those groups of women that, and I wish I was one of them, that can take progesterone and they are out like a light. They get so groggy. Now, it does help me get into a deeper sleep, but it doesn't make, I could take it during the day and I'm not going to be looking at the couch thinking I need a nap. But for some women, if they take it at dinner, they might be out like a light at dinner. So is that just a sensitivity issue? And those women just, they have to keep it at night before bed, like use something like berberine at dinner or something for better glucose control, because they'll still get the benefit of better insulin control, even if they take it at night? Or can you get into like that aspect of a little bit more of the sensitivity, the sensitive women of progesterone?
Oh, that was quite a question.
I know that's a lot. Well, there was so much going through my brain because as you're talking, I think about patients. You know, that's whenever I'm interviewing someone and they're basically teaching me something new on an interview, I always go, I'm like, well, there's this one patient that literally when she takes it, she can like fall asleep 5 minutes later, but yet we still want to help her with weight loss and with insulin control. So should I have her try a half of a dose, maybe like a smaller, like a 50 milligram dose at dinner, and then we'll do, let's say 300 at bed? Or how would we do that?
Could backfire. So one of the important metabolites of progesterone is allopregnenolone. And allopregnenolone's got a huge effect on the GABA receptors. Oral progesterone seems to be the biggest opportunity for making allopregnenolone, which will make you dizzy and drowsy. It can do that almost as well as phenobarbital. So when you are whacked out, totally whacked out. But this isn't everyone. We were doing those high doses of progesterone oral capsules, and many women. It was years before we had enough complaints that may cause dizziness on it. So it's not the usual person. So what we did, to some extent, we'd say, okay, avoid the oral progesterone. Use it vaginally, use it rectally, use it on your skin, use it sublingually, and perhaps you can avoid making that much allopregnanolone that you're whacked out. Another thing would be to play around with the dosing, maybe smaller doses more frequently.
Okay, this isn't something that's talked about enough, but did you know that your body actually runs on electricity and electrical impulses that move your cells and move your blood and really are the triggers for life? But today we're exposed to a crazy amount of non-native polarizing EMF fields. You've heard about these, the 5G cellular, our computers, even the wearable devices, the Wi-Fi in your home, that constant bombardment of EMF radiation causes stress on the body at a cell level. So now the thyroid's affected, your sleep is affected, cortisol, memory, brain function, and yeah, the ability to lose weight can actually be affected by EMF. So what can we do about it? I've gone down the rabbit hole of EMF protection. I got to tell you, I'm not going to wear the ugly clothes. I'm not going to wrap myself in a blanket when it's 90 degrees outside. I needed something practical. So I found EMF Rocks. And I know it sounds crazy. It's a bag of rocks, right? But trust me, when you go down the rabbit hole of science of EMF Rocks, they protect you and your entire home, depending on where you place them. So if you want more details on this, you can listen to my podcast with Justin Franson of EMF Rocks. We went into the science. He even surprised me by telling me that driving an electric car is like driving in a microwave. So you're going to want to listen to the episode. But in a nutshell, EMF Rocks are grounding bags that you put at the foot of your desk, at your bed, throughout your home to literally protect you 24/7 from that constant bombardment of EMF. And that simple strategy that doesn't require you to wear ugly clothes is just enough to protect your body and help it to work better, help all your cells to work better, help your thyroid work better. So what you're going to do is go to EMF Rocks, EMFROCKS.com/Dr. Amy, DRAMIE. It's going to save you some money on grabbing some EMF Rock bags, the grounding bags for yourself. Let me know how you feel after you use these, because I think you're going to notice, I know you're going to notice massive shifts in your body, including your weight.
I was just gifted with some progesterone capsules in various strengths. And I decided I've never felt this dizziness stuff. So I took 250 milligrams one morning and I felt it.
Okay. And I felt it. That was it. Okay.
My trainer came over. He goes, "What's wrong with you? You look like you're drunk." And I said, "Yeah, it's this progesterone." And he said, "Let's work out because I'm going to need to speed up the metabolism." And then I ate a big breakfast, gone in a couple hours.
Yeah.
So I can really feel that now, what people feel. And maybe if you just lay down and don't do much, it's probably going to last longer. So that this allopregnanolone formation, you can try to adjust the impact of it by changing the dosage form and or the amount at a particular time. Progesterone will allow you to sleep. Otherwise, it doesn't make you sleep. It quiets your mind so you can then go to sleep. So there's no inducing sleep with progesterone under normal circumstances without the big amount of allopregnanolone. So there's a connection with insulin, glucose, adrenaline production, and progesterone. So if you are experiencing these insulin glucose swings and you get to a low blood glucose level, especially in the night, your adrenaline is going to surge.
That's what wakes people up, right?
That's what wakes people up. And that's your body's function to keep the blood glucose up to get to your brain. Okay, now you're awake. Now you can't fall asleep because a couple of things is you have to detoxify that adrenaline. Adrenaline, like estrogens, rely on methylation to detoxify. So there's a good percentage, some people say about 40% of the population does not methylate very well, and that's how you detoxify molecules.
Mhm.
So if you come across somebody who's not methylating, and you can tell by high homocysteine levels, or you can tell by the genetic testing for those SNPs,
Mhm.
they're going to have a problem getting rid of the adrenaline they just got. So in the middle of the night, when that adrenaline's surging, you've got a couple of options. You can eat something, because that'll bring your blood glucose up and diminish the need for the adrenaline. You
Mhm.
can take progesterone, which will balance that adrenaline stimulation. Or you can also take, like, if you know that you're a poor methylator, take extra methylating things like the methylated B complex when you wake up, to allow your body to gently detoxify it.
Mhm.
So this is really a big problem. It comes up many times, the sleep disturbances, and it's so tied up into the insulin glucose. Even my hero, Katerina Dalton, way back when,
Mhm.
even though she didn't write a whole lot of it about this, she asked her patients to eat 5 times a day. And she wasn't really particular with what they were eating at the time. She wasn't so specific, but she was looking at keeping that blood glucose stabilized. And I
Mhm.
had one pretty severe PMSers who are in the PMDD category, a new category. We developed premenstrual dysphoric disorder. It's another story. She had a remarkable improvement just by shifting over to the 5 times a day. It was amazing. Normally I would avoid that, but for her it was absolutely perfect. And then I asked her to eat more proteins and fats, because she was eating a lot of seedy things and grainy things. I said, okay,
Mhm.
how do we shift over here and give you even more stabilization? So that helps. And I'm always asking anybody with all these symptoms, asking about, or I see their tests, what's the insulin and glucose doing? And we're having an epidemic of this going on, as far as I'm concerned. So I see women, they're in pretty good shape. They probably complain about a weight gain, but not much, maybe 5-10 pounds or something.
Mhm.
And when you look at your tests, you have many indicators of insulin glucose issues, and they have the symptoms of all this hormone disarray.
Yeah.
So it's a big thing. So adrenaline's a huge player. We don't really have a good measurement. I think we can do it with the organic acids test. We can measure adrenaline, noradrenaline effect, but otherwise, this is not normally tested for.
Well, can you just wear a CGM through the night as well and see that dip in your glucose, or does it not even show? Will like an 80 coming in at an 80, let's say on your CGM, you would look and there's no alarms going off, right? It's not waking you up with an alarm like my did when I dropped a 30, but it might be low enough for somebody to wake up.
Exactly. I was talking to a colleague, and she happened on this. She had one of her patients wearing a continuous glucose monitor. Every time she had a hot flash or night sweat, her glucose dropped to 50 every time. And then I saw her not that long ago, and I said, I've been telling everybody about this. And I said, do you still see that is a cause? And she goes, every time. And
So the
now
remedy of that is more progesterone, because progesterone will come in. So instead of, oh, you're hot flashing, let's increase your estradiol. Would you go to increasing the progesterone first if that was happening to one of your patients?
Yes, absolutely. And unfortunately, it's in the vernacular, whatever, of medical practice, that they go for estrogen. And I think this might have come from Premarin, the conjugated horse estrogens, was approved when it was first approved for vasomotor symptoms. However, Premarin is not just estrogen. I just found one article not too long ago. They've identified 60 hormones in Premarin, and 10 of them were progesterone-like, another 7, 8 were testosterone-like. So they got the approval for this, but everybody calls it an estrogen, but it's really quite a complex entity. And it does work for that, or it never would have lasted on the market. But is it the progesterone-like molecules that are helping the vasomotor response, or is it the estrogen-like ones, or the testosterone-like ones, or a combination of everything? But the hormone that's really falling when this all starts up is progesterone.
Now, you were just talking about basically the synthetic form of, we'll say estrogen, even though there are other hormones in conjugated equine estrogen. But what about progestin? You know, we get that confused a lot in, we'll just say the general population, that a woman will say, well, I'm on progesterone, but she's on progestin or she's on birth control. Can you talk a little bit about what is progestin as it relates to truly bioidentical progesterone?
Okay, so actually the manufacture and practical use of these hormones and hormone-like things have a similar way to make them. It's semi-synthetic from a plant steroid, just like our cholesterol, but we can extract this basic structure from plants, and then we alter it to make the hormone you want. So that's where your progesterone and estradiol and testosterone, that's how it's manufactured. Well, drug companies want to patent new unique molecules that they can market the heck out of and try to convince us it's better. For example, why they first had the synthetics, they would say, oh, the bioidentical hormones, which they had already made, they don't persist. So we'll make something that's longer acting. What's it mean if it's longer acting? It means your liver can't get rid of it. So you're giving your liver a toxic, so it keeps going through your body end, rather than use exactly what your body needs. And yes, there are some symptoms that can be alleviated. For example, medroxyprogesterone acetate, or was Provera, and a couple other brand names. They would give this for 10 to 14 days and supposedly produce a bleed when you withdrew the drug. Actually, this was used in my early days as a pharmacist. They would give 10 days of this medroxyprogesterone acetate to see if you were pregnant. So if after 10 days you did not bleed, probably you're pregnant. But what they found was doing this little 10 days only of this fake hormone were producing birth defects. So they stopped that practice.
Wow.
Yeah. Pretty shocking. There's another little thing here I want to mention, because we're all taught, 100% of us are taught, that it's a drop of progesterone that brings on bleeding. And I'm here to say it's not true.
Well, that's funny, because one of the questions I wanted to ask you, because I see this in my patients when we start them on bioidentical hormone, is both of them, you know, all three, is that they will have some breakthrough bleeding. So we have menopausal women that haven't bled for a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. They've been in the conventional system, so they haven't been on hormones. You start them on hormones, and then they're messaging like, I literally just had a period. So in order to address that, again, you're saying give more progesterone, because the progesterone isn't going to induce a bleed. It's actually going to stop that abnormal spotting, bleeding in a postmenopausal woman.
Well, it does both.
Okay. Break it down.
Let's say in your normal menstrual cycle, actually progesterone in the first part of the luteal phase really prepares the endometrium for the implant of the egg. Mm-hmm. When that doesn't happen, the nature of progesterone changes and it becomes a secretory hormone. And back in the days with the PMSers, many women had symptoms 1, 2, 3 days into bleeding, and they were regular as anything. They tended to be very regular. So the advice was keep using the high dose of progesterone as long as you have the symptoms. So they never stopped their progesterone, and the symptoms subsided, and they had no drop. And it wasn't like forcing a bleed. No, you're going to bleed. I think you're going to bleed in the luteal phase when you have enough progesterone. I did see a study where they were trying to, probably in perimenopause, duplicate the luteal phase, and they use 200 milligrams for 10 to 14 days, I forget, 300 and 400. The 200s almost never bled. The 300s sporadically bled. The 400s reliably bled. So my theory is when you get enough to make it secretory, the progesterone prepares that tissue to be shed, to be gotten rid of. Okay, so let's say you have the woman, now she's in menopause, and you're going to start her with some estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. That's fine. Well, if she's got any buildup there, and as soon as she gets enough progesterone to address it, that progesterone will make that tissue secretory, and away it goes.
So it's shedding and she's having a cycle.
Well, she's just shedding. There's no ovulation involved here, none at all.
Just bleeding. Just a bleed. Yeah. Just a bleed. Not a true cycle, just a bleed. Right.
Right. So you're getting rid of accumulated tissue. That's all well and good. Prepare your patients ahead of time. Know that it's going to happen. If it happens, it's wonderful. It's a wonderful thing. Going forward, we want your endometrium to stay quiet and not build up and not have to be having breakthrough bleeding. So let's go to your patient. Let's say you're using maybe a couple 100 milligrams of progesterone, some estradiol, testosterone, and they're doing this for years. And then all of a sudden there's some bleeding.
Right.
Okay. So I always ask, what have you been doing in the previous couple months? Did you have anything stressful happen? And 100% of the time, it's sometimes big things, funerals and divorces and all kinds of stuff going on, some really severe stresses. And I then tell them, during this period of stress, your progesterone was helping deal with that, with helping the corticosteroids deal with the stress. You have lost your balance with the estrogen. So during this time, your endometrium is free to get stimulated by the estrogen. You build up some tissue. Once the stress is passed, then you get your progesterone activity back with the same dose. You're taking the same dose all the time. And it'll shed what you just accumulated during that stressful time. So you're already over the problem. Because we don't understand progesterone, women will, because they're bleeding or their conventional doctors will say, you have to come in. We've got to evaluate the thickness of your endometrium. We've got to rule out cancer, a whole bunch of things. So the first thing is this probability of there was some stress that disrupted this. Now, suppose you start menopausal women on some dose of progesterone, estrogen, testosterone, and this is happening frequently. That means that you're always in this state of estrogen providing more stimulation than progesterone is able to counter. So that means you're underdosed in progesterone for the estrogen you have. So your choice is decrease the estrogen a bit or increase the progesterone, do some of both. But you have to get into a better balance, and then all that bleeding will stop. I had one client, a nice lady who was actually very anxious too. And she had been using pellets and testosterone and estradiol pellets, and she'd been bleeding for 9 months.
Oh, my goodness. Okay.
And her progesterone, she was given one or 200 milligram progesterone capsules to take every day. So obviously the problem is that she was having too much estrogen stimulation for the progesterone she had. So she was determined to stop the pellets, which she had, but there's still residual, from her last dose. And I said, you have to use more progesterone to get your endometrium quiet. So she eventually did. And it took 800 milligrams.
Okay.
And
yeah, I like the references of the doses too, because that helps people wrap their mind around it. Okay.
800 milligrams, she was fine. And she turned into a different woman too. She was calm, she was smiling, she was happy.
That's
and
amazing.
before she was stressed to the max. Then she went to a doctor who I happen to know who does a lot of hormone therapies. And she said, can you imagine my surprise when he offered me a prescription for 50 milligrams of progesterone. Just like-
Oh my God. Well, I was going to ask you, you have said in other interviews I've heard you on, you have said that this go low and slow method is actually more detrimental to the patient, and that we as practitioners really need to break out of that mindset.
Yes,
So
you
there's
need,
a perfect example of it.
right. Relief is pretty easy to get to. The emotional things right away, things like bleeding. Maybe you need a couple cycles. Let's say you have a heavy bleeder, and let me bring that up because it's a huge cause of women going in for hysterectomies, because we're leaving women just, let's let them bleed until they can't stand anymore. We'll cut everything out.
Mhm.
It's horrible. So this is where you need progesterone. You need that adrenal progesterone in the first part of the cycle. This is where you're building up all that tissue to be shed. So if the adrenal gland progesterone is inadequate, it's not balancing that. So that's all you have to do is get some progesterone in the first part of the cycle. And then you can maybe do more generous progesterone in the second part of the cycle, because sometimes with these bleeders, not enough progesterone is happening there either. And you could have residual tissue building up in your endometrium for the next time. I'll give you an example. This was quite a young woman back in the Women's International days. She was bleeding so profusely every month that she had blood transfusions.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And the doctors in the emergency room would say, okay, you've got to take birth control pills and take 2 or 3 of them. Well, they're highly estrogenic, so they were just building her up to the next visit. So we got her under control, so she wasn't going to the emergency room. 1,700 milligrams of progesterone, and she had to use lozenges. She was tried creams, and it didn't seem to absorb so well for her.
So on that note of delivery, and that brings up another question that I have been dying to ask you. You know, we have many different modes of delivery. We've already mentioned oral, we've mentioned cream, troche, vaginal suppositories, rectal suppositories, pellets, injectable progesterone back in the day. So what is your favorite mode of delivery?
I've used just about everything except injectable.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you have to tailor it to the person. Other times it really doesn't matter. Like, is it easier for you to take a capsule than it is to rub cream all over your body? Sometimes it's just a personal preference. But I'll give you an example. Cream generally is pretty easy, but if you're a low thyroid person, now we're in your bailiwick.
Yep.
What happens? So your circulation to the skin is very poor.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll have cold hands and feet, cold skin.
Yep.
And the other thing in creams, progesterone is not completely dissolved in the oils inside the creams, and it requires your skin oils to finish the solution of progesterone from the powder, and then it can go through your skin. The powder cannot go through your skin, and you can find even some people will say, you know, I get this residue on my skin when I use my progesterone cream. That's progesterone that never made it through. So you can do a couple things with that. Like if you were a hypothyroid person, make sure you have a hot bath or shower before you put it on to increase your circulation. You can add more oils to whatever you have, add more coconut oil or your favorite lotion or whatever to finish the solution of progesterone to get into your skin. But if you don't know that, you are not getting the dose you're thinking you're getting as a hypothyroid person. So that might not be the best dosage form for you. You might do better on oral in that case, or you might do better on vaginal in that case.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting because I'm gonna get really personal here and let my listeners know something that they might not know about me, but I'm going to ask you here live. I am on the Wiley protocol.
Mhm.
I have been on that protocol for a year and a half and have never bled. We are using cream and oral, but we're only using 200 oral, obviously on the days that I'm supposed to have progesterone, and none on the days that I'm not. And combined with the cream. Could not tell you what my cream dose is because the clicks change. You go up to, I'm at like click number 18 or 20 today, twice a day, but I still haven't bled. What would you say, in your opinion, that needs to change? Do I need more progesterone to induce that bleed?
Yes.
Yeah, because maybe I'm not absorbing the cream. I'm hypothyroid. Even though I'm optimal, I will always be hypothyroid. So maybe I'm not absorbing the cream.
Yep. Very, very possible. And that's another thing with some of these larger doses, if they are creams. It's not that all of that's going in, some percentage of that. And once David Zava told me in creams, you can get as little as 10% absorption all the way to 80. Can depend on the cream base too. There's this kind of law of distribution between a cream and your skin oils and stuff, how likely it is that cream to allow that dissolution into your skin oils, for example. So it can be a little more complicated. But
and it's funny, I see that with testosterone. And I always talk about that. I'm like, I'll have a woman on testosterone cream and she'll move, 2 points in 3 months with testosterone, but I didn't even think about the correlation with a progesterone cream.
Yep. So you could try using what you have, use the cream vaginally, for instance. Vaginal transmucosal delivery tends to be pretty darn good.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the Facebook groups I follow, they were, you could get a vaginal applicator, but they actually got gummy molds and put their cream in it, froze it so they could insert it vaginally easily to maximize the absorption from what they had. But have you had an ultrasound? Do you know if you have any tissue built up?
Ultrasound is fine. Vaginal lining is fine. I'm actually going on Monday for a biopsy just to check all the boxes as to the why. But after that comes back clear, then I'll just increase my progesterone. I'll keep you updated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just definitely increase it. If there's something there to shed, you want to shed it. So Wiley protocol has the distinction being fairly high in estradiol too. So there's not enough progesterone. Plus, they do, when you have estrogen, you're using estrogen only for a certain part of the time. If there's not enough progesterone there, you can have various development of the endometrium. Suzanne Summers did the Wiley protocol, and she ended up getting her uterus removed.
Okay.
Guess
because
what?
of the buildup. Her lining built up too much. Yeah. Okay.
So it kind of shocking to me. I like some of the concepts of the Wiley protocol. I think hormones need to be more individualized than they allow for.
And that's really across the board, whether we're doing static dosing or rhythmic dosing, it should be more individualized, more personalized. And you even dose based on symptoms. I'm going to get into testing and what you prefer for testing and really what I've seen too and what I've heard on testing. But you really do dose based on symptoms, correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
99%.
Okay.
Is a clinical response.
Because the testing can get really confusing. So this is where I am just thoroughly confused. So I'm on the Wiley protocol. I have heard that topical, and this is even, we just recently added in the oral. So even if I go back to when I first started, I was just doing all topical. I've always heard that topical does not show up on serum, on blood labs. But my progesterone's coming back 20, 25, 30, 35, whatever. Really nice progesterone levels. Then I'll be using, let's say, an oral static dose with a patient, and we test. And supposedly, again, what I've heard from hormone experts is that oral should show up in blood. And we'll have someone on 300 milligrams of progesterone just come back at a 0.5 for progesterone. Now, is that the timing of it? She took it the night before, so maybe it's out of her system the next morning. I don't know. What do you prefer for testing, or should we just scrap the damn testing and dose based on symptoms?
Well, that's pretty much what I do on symptoms now. But so progesterone is going to peak in 4 to 6 hours if you take it orally, for sure. Creams maybe even sooner. I've even just recently was reading an article, and my eyes kind of popped up because they said, oh, progesterone is dispersed from the serum in 5 minutes. So nobody's checking at 5 minutes. So we
Right.
don't know. So we don't know where that elusive progesterone is. And then, as I was speaking before, all these hormones are compartmentalizing. I heard this great thing about saliva testing. That's the level in your saliva.
Mhm.
So we're being told that this is somehow a useful tool to identify your whole body hormones, but we don't have that for any tests. I'm not just going to pick on saliva. None of the tests can be representative because of different concentrations of receptors and different areas where the hormones are made there and used there. We just cannot measure this. And what's the final thing? The final thing is, are you getting the results you want?
Mhm.
And that's going by symptoms. You have to 100% of the time. So for progesterone, I spoke to one of my clients just earlier. She's taking 400 milligrams and she's raving how much better she feels, but she still has some hot flashes and occasional feelings of anxiety. And I said, you're almost there. Go up. It's got to be zero. And we've been so taught by the medical profession with all these drugs, like, oh, you have to take this drug and you've got to put up with the side effects. No, demand 100%. Like the lady today, if she just bumps her progesterone up a little bit more, it'll all be gone. And that's your endpoint, not a test. So I get crazy with people saying, oh, I've got to have an estradiol test of 100 to feel good. And I say, you did this test a year ago, and this was one moment in time.
Right.
You felt good then.
So true. I mean, your body could change in a few weeks, let alone a year.
A nurse practitioner I know did a advanced study, and she said this is what they did when she was working on her master's. She worked in a lab and they measured estradiol every 5 minutes. So
And
she said, if it's one thing I know about estradiol, it's never the same twice.
wow, that's eye-opening for sure.
Isn't
I
it?
mean, yeah, because it really just depends on then what time of day did you take it? Did you, use your last dose of estradiol the day before? Are you walking in with a new patch on you? I mean,
Exactly.
it's crazy.
So blood levels are more reliable if you have something like a patch, which is maintaining your level, or you had an injectable, which lasts longer. If you have pellets, they last longer. Then you can say something about the levels and your dosage form. But when you use capsules, creams, gels, lozenges, suppositories, no. And when you have to know when your last dose was and when you're taking the serum. And I think her name was Jennifer Landis. She was talking one time, and she has every single one of her patients measure at 6 hours after their last dose. So I think that's hard to do, but that's useful because you have to know that information to make any sense about what you're looking at. And then having measured that, what have you measured? You measure absorption. You don't measure, it doesn't tell you anything clinically. The patient tells you.
The patient tells you. Absolutely. Well, that just goes in line. I mean, I've been preaching this for years now, that the four most important words that any practitioner can ask a patient is, how do you feel? Because you're so much more than a lab value. So I love how Zoom just gave me a thumbs up with that. You're right. It is a thumbs up. You're right. We should be asking everybody, how do you feel? Because you're more than a lab value. So we need to bring that into the world of hormones as well. And I know you'll agree with me on this. You go to an A4M conference, and listen, I love A4M. They've done fantastic things in the world of functional medicine and hormones. But you could hear literally 3 different speakers all at the same conference. One will say blood is the way to go. The other one is like saliva is the only thing that you should be testing. And the other one is preaching the benefits of the Dutch test. And you leave there more confused than you were when you walked in.
100%. I will tell you what tests I like. So what I like to do, and I only really pay attention to it the most, is before you start. And I like they're calling it metabolic panel or whatever. Life Extension has it, like they call it female elite, but other labs have this array and you can customize it if you want. I want to see pituitary hormones, sex hormones, adrenal hormones, thyroid hormones, growth hormone, vitamin D. I want to see the lipids. I want to see the differential. I want to see the chemistry because they, and all from the same sample.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
you know, it's like a 12 tube thing.
It is. It is. That's exactly what we test on patients. So yes, it is about a 12 tube thing.
Well, good. We're in complete agreement. So that can reveal so much that's entirely missed. I had 6 clients in a row had such low cholesterol. I thought it was incompatible with life. So how can they make their hormones? And how do you know that if you don't test for it? So that's what I really like. And if you want to do a follow-up, some things are something you can see, like if you give DHEA and you measure testosterone and estrogen, that's a functional test. So you can see if that DHEA actually not only was absorbed, you can tell that from the test, but it's actually doing something. So it's a little step above that's in there that you can rely on.
Yeah.
So I like that.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Looking at the whole thing and then pairing it up with the person's symptoms is key. Now, if we're increasing progesterone based on symptoms, you had mentioned 2,500 is the max dose that you have ever heard of. Are there any negatives or side effects or contraindications for going up in the dose of progesterone?
Okay, so with that dose, if you happen to measure it, where might you be? You'd be high luteal levels, maybe 20, 30, 40 nanograms per deciliter. You have to get beyond a pregnancy level, which is at least 50. And now I see labs going all the way to 550 with pregnancy levels, which begs the question for me is where's the sweet spot in there? Like you can be barely pregnant, barely carry a child successfully, or can you be solid? Katarina Dalton treated her PMS patients. They took their high dose of progesterone through their whole pregnancy. Okay. 10 years later, she did a study on their children. Extremely bright, socially very, very good. They were just on par with sports, but everything else was much better, having had all that extra progesterone during the pregnancy. So I think this is a wild, unexplored field. Like, what's the best amount of progesterone to have during your pregnancy? We don't know. So until you get over 550, which you can't do, you can fill your tub with progesterone cream and sit in it.
Right. So you're saying 550 on a test, not 550 milligrams of progesterone, 550 on a test,
on
which
a test.
It's pretty much going to be impossible to hit. Yeah.
Yeah. Like if you get 40, maybe 60, that would be a lot. So does this apply to men too? Yes, because they were in utero with this ocean of progesterone feeding them. So before we talk about any kind of toxicity, we've got to go over the pregnancy level, and we can't do it.
Yeah. No, we're not going to hit that high. Okay. That's good because that you just put the mind at ease of many a woman out there that, guess what? We're going to increase your progesterone. So get ready. Because if you're my patient, we're doing some crazy stuff coming up. Thank you, Carol. Carol, I have 2 more questions. I know we're running low on time, but I have to get these in, and we will be doing a Q&A 100%. You gave me that idea in the beginning, and we're going to be doing that because I could go on for another hour. Okay, men. You had mentioned men. I have a patient that has AFib, and we started him on 200 milligrams of progesterone, and it is starting to help. I, of course, until today, have been nervous about increasing his progesterone because what could that do? You know, we do kind of compartmentalize it as more of a female hormone. So 200 mgs, So my question for him, and this is going to kind of circle back to my husband as well, who had SVTs and was given metoprolol. He doesn't take it because of how it makes him feel. Definitely sleep issues. He was, first responder, high stress, high anxiety. I'm thinking I should be slipping him some progesterone too to help with his SVT. So is there a correlation with heart?
Well, there's a correlation with the way you try to go about it. You use a beta blocker.
Right.
Okay. What's that beta blocker blocking? Adrenaline.
Right. Okay.
What moderates adrenaline?
Progesterone. Oh my gosh, you're right.
And the same for AFib. I would bet now there's so much in the literature about AFib and this, that, and nobody knows for sure what it is, but it certainly could be adrenaline based. And by balancing it with progesterone, like you just did with your patient. So why not get a little higher? I'd make sure there's plenty of magnesium in there. Okay, I'd like to put in this little caveat. So what progesterone uses up in its metabolized metabolic pathway for its derivatives uses up magnesium, it uses up B6. So as you're taking generous amounts of that, also make sure B6 and magnesium are available to use.
Okay. Beautiful. I'm going to do that. I'm going to report back to you on that as well.
Okay.
That's an amazing thing. And well, my final question is, where can people find you if they want to just hear more about, because you have a podcast, a TV show as well. You have a full practice. You offer free consultations if someone wants to just connect, and we're going to put that link in the show notes. So what else are you doing these days, and where can people find you?
So my website is the Wellness by Design Project, or also you can get there just carolpetersen.com with all E's. That might be easier. And I do offer an introductory 15 minutes. I think it's important that you have the opportunity to meet each other and see if you're in sync.
Yeah.
If something I say doesn't resonate with somebody, there's no point going any farther.
Exactly.
And you probably know that too.
Yep.
Either it sounds good to you, and I think that's important. Women and men, if they feel it's the right thing to do for themselves, they'll do it, and they'll do it happily, and they'll feel better and everything as well. If they're fearful, they're going to sabotage what they're doing, and it's just not going to work out as well as it could. So I like to offer the free 15, and I encourage anybody who wants to talk to me privately about what their specific thing is, and then you can also sign up for hourly consultations or 3 months of coaching.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Carol. Like I said, please, let's bring you back for a Q&A from questions from my audience. And then I have so many more questions as well. And I want to dive a little bit deeper into what I'm seeing as I start to use the higher doses in my husband and my patients and myself, all that good stuff.
And we can talk about other hormones too.
Somebody research me. I know, like we were hyper focused on progesterone, but yeah, let's not forget about the other hormones. Let's have some fun.
And the reason for all that is progesterone is, I think, the most highly ignored one, and so prevalent. We really need it, and it can stop a lot of misery if we make sure that's in place.
Right, and it plays with the other hormones, so we have to talk about them too.
Yes. Sure.
Well, Carol, I absolutely love you. Thank you so much for your time today. You are simply amazing and have really been changing the lives of men and women and practitioners with the work that you do. So thank you.
Well, good. That's my intention. One at a time if I have to.
That's it. That's it. That's all we can do.
Okay. Thanks, Dr. Amy.
Take care.
Pleasure.